it was a good experience. Looking back, sometimes I think, man, I should have stayed at Vegas, but
Today on the show, we have former college hooper and retired coach Tom Schubert. Welcome back, everyone. Today's guest needs no introduction to Memphis Tiger fans who were all in during the mid-1990s here in Memphis, Tennessee. He's now retired, but throughout his playing days and at all levels of coaching has an impressive 673 college basketball wins. Welcome to the show, Coach Tom Schubert.
thank you, Sandy. It's great to be here. Great to be here, Michael. Thank you for having me.
Hey, Coach, thank you for agreeing to being on the show, man. It's funny, man. I'm glad we reconnected, man. And we reconnected back in, I think it was in February. Yeah, we
Correct.
reconnected in February for Lorenzen's retirement jersey, and we just kind of reconnected then, man. So I'm glad to have you on the show, Coach. We go way back.
Well, absolutely, Michael. And it says, thank you for having me. When you're a retired coach, you don't get a lot of phone calls. So this is a pleasure and a great opportunity to kind of brag about you and your show and just tell a little bit about my story.
Well, great. So before we get into our conversation with you, we want to give a shout out to another loyal listener, Aaron McDonald. He left us a 5-star review on Apple on our conversation with Andre Turner and had this to say. Loved listening and hearing from this Memphis Tiger legend, Andre Turner. Those 1983-86 Tiger teams started my love for Memphis Tigers basketball. This podcast brings back some great childhood memories as I learned more about one of my childhood heroes. Go Tigers, go. I want to add that Aaron and his family are dedicated Memphis Rebounder members as well. Aaron, thank you for the review and being a loyal listener and supporter. Okay, Michael, I'm just going to let you kick it off because you guys you've played, well, not played together, but I'll let you kick it off.
Well, Coach was, you don't know, Sandy, Coach was very instrumental. He was the reason I played at the University of Memphis. He was the reason that I was there. He kind of took me under my wing. I had some times when I got some did not plays, but he told me to stay steady. He showed me there are different ways to score. He told me, like, look, if you're not getting the ball, you can run the floor. You can get a couple of dunks. You can get, hit you some free throws, get you a couple of putbacks, things like that. There's your points right there, and that's how I took the attitude instead of just, it was great to have him in my corner. I'll just say that much, Coach. Thank you so much for that, man.
Well, thank you for the compliment, Michael. And it's easy when you're dealing with great people like yourself, and as a coach, you're trying to win games. And at the same time, you have 15 different personalities and you're trying to, make sure they're all happy and doing the best they can and contributing in the team. And you had great patience and it all paid off, and that's the hardest thing I think young players go through is trying to have patience and they want to win right away or be successful right away and they don't want to pay the dues. And you certainly were kind of done wrong a little bit, but you hung in there, and that's why we were so successful the years you were there, and why you were so successful the later years after that.
Hey, Coach, it was two things. I'm gonna see if you remember this. It was two things. You're very instrumental in me becoming a Tiger. You're also instrumental in me in my second part of my career. It was two things you encouraged me to do while I was at Memphis besides basketball. What were those two things? You remember?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. In fact, I want to tell Sandy the story on how I noticed you. First of all, I thought, Sandy, this guy is one of the greatest athletes in the world. There he was in his prime. I'm not just saying that, he is. But he could have been a world-class track star. That's number one. And number two, could you imagine him as a professional volleyball player?
No.
I mean, with his timing and how quick he jumped. Are those the two things? But the third one was, Michael, the Harlem Globetrotters.
Yes.
And so,
Exactly.
Sandy,
Yes, there were three.
yeah. And so he could have done any of those things. And can I tell the story how
Sure.
I was my first year at the University of Memphis, I think was 92, 93 when Michael was still in high school. Is that correct, Mike? Yeah. And
No, I was at Shelby State then. I was at Shelby State.
Just at Shelby. That's right. Because you were first. So I knew of Michael when he was in high school. I came from a school in Louisiana Monroe. And then we went over. I remember Coach Finch and I going over to watch Shelby State and with Coach Sales. and I knew who Michael was, but I watched them do what they call these suicide drills. I don't know,
Yeah.
they don't use that term anymore because it's so negative. But it's
Right.
when you start on the baseline, you run to the free throw line, back to the baseline, to the half court,
Mm.
back to the baseline, free throw line extended, and all the way. And so they would, Coach Sales would get mad at the team. They put him on the line. And Michael played with some great athletes and great players. He would beat his teammates literally by a full court. That's almost impossible to do. I said, Coach, look at this guy. And then he'd be a highlight film and in practice, with these blocks and these dunks, and he was just so dynamic. He was like an acrobat in the air. And so it's not hard to notice Michael. And so Coach Finch loved him, of course. And the biggest thing I think was just getting Michael to fit into the program and just getting the opportunity. Once he was given that, he just took off, and he was one of the most dynamic players. And we talked about this earlier. Michael could have played in the NBA. There's no question he's an NBA talent, but it's better, I think, to go in a career where he lasted over 10 years with the Harlem
Right.
Globetrotters. He made a great living. Where sometimes in the NBA, it's not just being a great player. You have to be a little bit lucky and be with the right team. So I
Sure.
know Michael could
Yeah.
have played in the league, but I think the Globetrotters were a perfect fit for him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Coach. I appreciate all the compliments, man, and that's fine. I want to talk about you a little bit too, man. So, where did go ahead, Sandy? You go ahead and kick it off, Sandy.
Well, so there's so many things that I want to ask because when I was prepping for this, I didn't have a lot of information. Okay.
Sure.
But one thing that I want to ask right now, because we're already on that subject, is how difficult is it to look at all of these players and all of their different skill sets and abilities, and how hard, or how do you figure out how to put those together into a team that can play well together?
Well, I think you just said the key phrase: put together a team that can play well together.
Right.
I think an average fan can go out and look at great players and pick talent out. It's not hard to say Ja Moran is an incredible
Right.
basketball talent. But then when you're putting together your team, you don't want five Ja Morants. You want guys that blend in with the other players. That's the one unique thing about Michael. He had a unique skill set that no one else in the country had. We had to blend that into the team we already had. And then you have to find those players that are willing to do that, to give the sacrifice. The old saying, it's amazing what you can accomplish when no one cares who gets the
Right.
credit. And Michael was one of those players. And ironically, we had several guys, and many of them, almost all our team was like that at the University of Memphis when we had that success. Our 95 team that lost to Arkansas in overtime,
I was
it's such
there.
a,
I was
I know,
there.
and it was heartbreaking. Michael and I talk about that
It's
all the
very
time. And as,
heartbreaking.
Yeah.
as you know, Sandy, to win a national championship or to be the best in the world or in the country, a lot of luck comes into, and it's such a fine line between winning and losing. We were just unfortunate to lose that game. I really believe to this day, had we won that, we certainly would have made it to the Final Four. We would have had to beat Virginia and Kansas City, who upset Kansas the game after us. I mean, that's easy to say, but I really believe we could have won the national championship. And I don't know if Michael even knows this. Denny Crum, who was at Louisville at the time, we beat Louisville in the first round of the NCAA, and he said this. And Denny Crum wasn't in love with the University of Memphis, but he said,
No.
"Hey, I played UCLA and I played Memphis in 1995." He said Memphis had the better basketball team. Of course, UCLA went on to win the national championship. Now, again, that's just one man's opinion, but honestly, if we'd have gotten there, I really believe we could have won it all. And you look at our depth; it was just incredible. The guys that came off the bench, one of them started or was a first round pick in the NBA that you had on the show, David Vaughn. So it's just amazing how good that team was and what great people they were as well.
Yeah.
Wow, man.
You know, I think sports is full of the what ifs, because so many, like, life happens, so many things happen, and it's always about the, what would have happened if, these circumstances have been different and everything. That was an incredible game. I was there. A bunch of us from school drove up there. We scout tickets to get into the game. I didn't even understand the call at the end. The Arkansas fans had explained it to me, but that was it was well worth it. So let's talk a little bit about you grew up in Chicago. Is that correct?
That's correct. I did a suburb of Chicago, and I, of course, played high school sports there and basketball, and then went off to college. And knowing that I always wanted to, stay involved in athletics, particularly as a coach. So
So, did you fall like you said you played other sports? Was basketball like your primary sport growing up?
I think so. I'm small. I did have some quickness, and I think I had a unique ability to kind of run a team. I was a point guard. So I kind of gravitated to basketball because I was having some success. And, the biggest thing I think with young people, and especially today with all the social media, is, trying to get a college scholarship. I mean, that was always
Yes.
my goal and dream. And that's all I wanted to do. And I'll be honest, I ended up at an incredibly great school and played for one of the greatest coaches ever. But my choices at school at that time, and again, I'm an old man, but I finished high school in 1976. I wanted to go to UCLA, and then growing up in Chicago, the University of Illinois was a big school. My
Right.
brother went to school there, and then DePaul, and then Notre Dame was big because they always played on TV. There was no
Yeah.
ESPN or any of
Right.
that. So those were my four schools. Ironically, I ended up having a chance to go to University of Nevada, Las Vegas, UNLV, and I played for the legendary coach Jerry Tarkanian, and we were fortunate to go to the Final Four my freshman year. And
Wow.
I thought basketball was pretty easy, and I thought, well, we'll go again next year. We didn't win this year, but we'll go again. And then a lot of things happened, but as you know, Tarkanian went on to win the national championship in 1990 and almost had the greatest team ever in 91.
So what led you from UNLV to Mississippi State?
Well, it's ironic. We got put on 3 years probation, and back then it was a little bit different. The NCAA kind of had a vendetta against Coach Tarkanian, so we were restricted where there was no national television, there was no postseason play. So I loved it at UNLV. I only played in 8 games as a freshman on the Final Four team, but I was the only freshman on the team, so I felt like it was a successful season. I loved it there, but I wanted to play and I wanted to kind of repeat myself in the Final Four, have an opportunity to play. And so Mississippi State, a guy named Kermit Davis Sr., not Junior, who coached at Ole Miss, he actually recruited me when I was a young guy. And so they offered me an opportunity to come and sit out a year and then play 3 years. And you talk about a culture shock going from Las Vegas, Nevada to Starkville, Mississippi. But I do have a claim to fame. I don't know if you know, but in Starkville they call it Stark Vegas. So
No, I don't know that.
I was the guy that brought Vegas to Starkville. At least I say that anyway. But yeah, it was a great opportunity to play. Played with some NBA players. Michael would probably know some of the names, and back then Charles Barkley and Dominique Wilkins and those guys
Yeah.
were in the SEC. It was a great league at that time as well.
So,
Oh man.
so what was, because I'm always curious about the culture shock from Chicago, you growing up in Chicago to Starkville, Mississippi. That's a big difference.
It really is. I didn't even know what grits were, to be honest. I had never had okra in my life. I love okra now, fried especially. But so it was things that I learned and realized it's kind of like coaching and not coaching. When you're coaching, you don't think there's anything else in the world other than
Right.
coaching your team. And then when you get away from it, you realize there's other parts of the world going on. So it was a culture shock, but the people are very nice. I learned a lot about myself, about the South, about just everything in general. And the best thing is it gave me an opportunity to get my education. I was actually able to get my master's while I was still playing. And then I have some lifelong friends that I still talk to from Starkville, from my days of playing in the SEC. So it was a good experience. Looking back, sometimes I think, man, I should have stayed at Vegas, but you can't regret anything now. You just got to move on.
Well, that and Starkville is a part of who you are. You grew up there, really, in those formidable years in college. They made you a big part of who you are today. So I don't think that you'd be different if you'd stayed at UNLV.
Absolutely. College times are great. You try to tell young people that college is going to be the best time of their life, and
It
they don't
is.
really necessarily believe it. And then when you leave, you think you're going into greener pastures, and you actually are. But as you know, college was a wonderful experience
Eh,
for most people, and particularly for myself. I loved it.
Well, me too, Michael.
All right, Coach. After your playing days were over at Mississippi State, you have you have to begin. What was your thought process then? Did you
Well,
immediately want to get into coaching? How did you get into coaching? What was it like? Okay, I'm done. You want to
well,
give back?
I wanted to be like you, Michael. I wanted to continue playing, and I was a good little player. And when I say I wasn't a great talent, but I think I was effective. I knew my role. And so I think I was disruptive to the opposite team. Unfortunately, pro teams don't look for that. They look
Right.
for superstars that can make their program super successful. So I tried to play a little bit. There was a team called Athletes in Action, which is a non-denominational Christian team that plays all over the world. And I tried
We
out for
played
the
them, didn't we, Coach? Didn't we play them?
Oh, we did. Yes, we've played
Yeah.
them before. Absolutely. They don't play the college schedule anymore because of the NCAA rules, but they used to be very competitive, and they've beat a lot of good teams over the years. The team was based in Abbotsford, Canada, believe it or not, up in British Columbia. I was invited to the tryout up there. I went for a week, and I didn't make the team. It killed me because that's really what I wanted to do because I wanted to continue playing. But yeah, I think you know this. So one of my college teammates, who a guy named Gary Hooker, was a Harlem
Yeah.
Globetrotter, and the coach that recruited me, a young man named Steve Newton, told me about the
Yeah.
opposition team called the Washington Generals that plays against the Globetrotters. So my first year, Sandy, out of college in 1982 tour, I played on the Washington Generals that played against the Harlem
Oh,
Globetrotters.
wow. That's pretty
So
cool.
I loved it because I love to travel and I love to play. And I thought, man, this is the life. And you weren't getting paid a whole lot of money. I didn't have that big contract like Michael, but we
No, no.
paid good because you didn't spend any of your money. You were gone for 9 months out of the year. Michael, we were even gone more than you guys were. And then, so everything you made, you kept. And I wanted to do that again the next year, but then that's when I had an opportunity to get into coaching, and I turned that down and went into coaching because I knew that was more of a long-term goal, and opportunities only come once in a lifetime in coaching. You got to jump on it. And I went to work for a guy named Bill Jones at the University of North Alabama, who ironically won a national championship in Division II. And his assistant at the time was a guy named Gary Elliott, who also went on to win a national championship in Division II basketball. Now North Alabama is a D1. So I've been fortunate to learn from some great coaches, and I've got many more along the way. But so I was very lucky, and that's what made me want to continue the process and stay in coaching.
So
Oh man.
my question is because obviously we're from Memphis, but how did you get the job at Memphis?
I love it. So I followed Memphis program, when they were in the Final Four in '85, and I used to go to the AAU events, and Michael can tell you that the Memphis AAU program was really strong, and the teams did really well. Well, one time I was I was in Virginia at the I'm trying to think of the name of the tournament, Mike, where they have the seniors. It's not as prevalent anymore. But Coach Finch was there watching Elliot Perry, and I had a couple players from Louisiana Monroe playing into Anthony Jones and Carlos Funches. And I went up to Coach Finch. He was on the same flight as and I said, "Man, if you ever have a job open, Coach, I'd love to work for you. I like you." He remembered that to this day. And then Coach Sales, Michael's junior college coach,
Right.
actually liked me. I had recruited several of his players. I never got one when I was at Monroe, but he liked me. I brought a lot in for a visit. Do you guys remember Ronnie Sims? Michael, I know you do. He
Yeah.
played at Ole Miss. Ronnie was
Yes.
before you. I had Ronnie visit. I thought we were going to get him, but so I told Coach that. And when he had an opening going into the 92 93 season, right coming off the Elite Eight, he brought me in for an interview. And I can remember to this day, like it was yesterday, we had just a great time. He was so personable and easy to talk to. And he was such a great guy. And I knew how hard the players played for him. So it was an easy transition. He offered me the job. Of course, I jumped at it. And the rest is kind of history. I was there 5 years, Coach's last 5 years. I had an opportunity to be around some great teams, and to this day, like I said, I still have a lot of super friends in Memphis and some great relationships.
Yeah, Coach, in those 5 years, you coached Memphis State and the University of Memphis.
That's right. That's right.
Correct. I've been through a lot of name changes. I've 4 schools changed the name. I don't know if that's good or bad, if they're trying to get me off their records or what, but yes.
That was Coach, that was a good recruiting class you brought in that year. Me, Lorenzen, and we came in. That was a great recruiting class you had.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Michael. Pieces of the puzzle that, are almost hard to describe. And you guys were the ones that got us over the hump. And again, it's unfortunate we didn't, advance to the Final Four. But, we have 2 championships, as you know, back-to-back championships. That's hard to do in college athletics. We won the last year of the Great Midwest, and then we won the inaugural year of Conference USA, the outright championship. You remember when you went to Cincinnati and put it on them, Mike? I remember that very well. Where you played.
Yeah, there was no pressure, Coach. There was no pressure. Dave was hurt and Rodney was hurt.
So sure, I remember so well.
I didn't have to look over my shoulder. He couldn't take me out, so I was relaxed that game.
Exactly. Well, the Cincinnati fans were not real happy with us. We clinched the championship on their home court, and that was the days when Bob Huggins and Coach Finch and Memphis and Cincinnati had some incredible battles.
They did, and I miss. People were asking me last year, like, what's my favorite rivalry, and I was like, the Memphis-Cincinnati rivalry. I really, really liked that. That just seemed to be really, really, I don't know, tough.
You know what? My first year at Memphis, when we went to the Sweet 16, we beat Louisville, I think the first game, but we hadn't played Louisville in years. And so, but we knew about the rivalry. And most of the guys on the team, 95% of the guys on the team was from Memphis. Isn't that correct, Coach? I think,
yes.
So we grew up, we knew about the rivalry. But those Louisville guys, they didn't know about the rivalry. So when we played them, we were all fired up, and they were looking at us like, what is wrong with, what the hell's wrong with these guys? I mean, why are they so hyped? And so by the time they realized it was a little bit too late.
Yeah, it was, we put it on them. They had a good ball club, and, for us to have a first round game, Memphis, Louisville, that's a tough matchup, but we were really good that game. And then of course the next game we beat Purdue, and then we had Arkansas in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I said, Coach, there's nothing like the NCAA tournament, man. I played all kinds of basketball, played against a lot of people, but during the NCAA tournament, it's a special. I can't even describe it. It's so special with if you're a basketball player, if you're being a part of it.
It's glad to hear you say that, Michael, because I think that's what most young people that want to play college basketball, that's what they dream of and they see, the tournament on television. And then, of course, the Final Four. When I was a kid, like I said, I wanted to play for UCLA because they were so good, or I wanted to go to the Final Four. And then as a coach, we were talking about coaching. That's every coach's dream, is going to the NCAA tournament. And what you want to do is you want to get there. And then, as you know, anything can happen. I mean, look at the Final Four this year. If you'd have said Florida Atlantic and San Diego State were going to be in it, I think people would have said you're crazy. So anything can happen. You just want to get there, and it's tough. Now they have 68 teams. When you were in it, it was 64. And prior to you playing, they only took like 30 some teams, 28 teams. It was much smaller than it is today. And I think it will expand before, our lifetime's over. I think they'll get it up well over 100, or,
really?
The format will change.
So do you watch a lot of college basketball these days?
I do, Sandy, probably to my demise. I'm married. I was going to, Michael knows this story. I was 60 years old when I first got married, for the first time and the last time. So, I always wanted to be a coach, and I don't know if I was smart enough, but maybe I just observed that I knew how demanding college coaching is, and it's a whole different level. It's not a hard job, it's just a time demanding job. And it's like raising a whole new family. And I always felt like it would be very difficult to have a great relationship with your spouse or with
Right.
children and be a very dedicated coach. Now, there's some that have the ability to do that, and I respect and admire that. But I also know there's a lot of coaches, men and women, where their
Mhm.
spouses have struggled understanding what the commitment is. Their children don't understand it, and it's not fair. And so I didn't want to go through that. That's not. I think the number one thing when you get married is you're a husband or a wife, and then when you become a parent, you're a
Right.
father or mother, and that's the number one responsibility. And Michael can attest to that. He was in a very competitive, athletic field when he was a father and a husband, and it's difficult. So yes, it's coaching is very competitive and time demanding.
I was
Yeah.
talking to there was a coaches clinic here a couple of weekends ago, and uh, some guys that coach at other colleges now, they were putting it on, and I was talking to one of them, and he's probably, I think he's in his late 20s, and his wife was there as a photographer, and he was telling me that he had coached at Chicago and then just got another job out in California, and he'd been there for like 5 months, and I said it must be hard moving around, and he said for him not so much, because when he goes to a new school he's automatically in a little family, with the basketball team and stuff. He said but it's the hardest on his wife because she doesn't have that built-in family environment, and she has to figure out how to make friends. And I just realized that it is really hard for whatever the spouses, whether it's men or women. Our new women's coach, her husband moved here, and I've often wondered, you know how hard it is on men when they're the spouse and the wife is the coach. How hard is it's just a complicated situation, and you want to give back to the kids of today, and you love the game and all of that. And so one thing that I find interesting is when you were at Memphis, you said you were talking to Mike about some things that he should do. Was that something that you did with a lot of your players throughout the years, is just talk to them about like what other things that they should consider?
Well, I hope so. I think the greatest compliment you can get is when you have a great relationship with your ex players, And I will say this, it's a little bit easier to have that relationship as assistant coach than the head coach.
Right.
The head coach has to make those tough decisions, and he's usually the disciplinarian, or he's the one that ultimately selects who plays. So sometimes you get a player upset because you're not playing enough, and that happens. But yes, so I think the responsibility of an assistant coach is to kind of treat those players, whether like you're a man or woman, as they're your own children, and you're trying to make decisions to help them not only become better athletes and players, but to help them become better people.
Right.
And we all want to be successful as coaches, or especially as athletes. But the word that I like, and I stole it from Lou Holtz, is you want to be significant. And I'm going to tell a story on Michael that he doesn't even know he was significant. But what I mean by that is that you have a lasting, forever impression on a young person, or even someone older, that maybe admired you or followed you and wanted you. And so when you're significant in the coaching world, you've lived, you've done it all. Zig Ziglar says you get everything in life you want if you help enough other people get what they want. I
Right.
honestly feel I have that attitude when I went into coaching. I couldn't believe you got paid. We didn't get paid handsomely at that time. Now they do. But I thought, man, this is a job because this is fun. I loved going to work and working with the young people, and they kept you energetic, and, just watching them be successful. So watching guys like Michael and David Vaughn and Penny Hardaway and Cedric Henderson and Chris Garner and Lorenzen Wright and all those guys go on and do wonderful things and have great families and things like that. That's what really it's all about. At the same time, you're a competitor. You're trying to win. There's no fun in losing, and Michael can tell you that. I mean, it's terrible. You mentioned the game when we lost to Arkansas, Sandy, in overtime. I literally went back. My father used to follow the team because he was retired, and
Oh,
Coach Finch would let him come and stay in my room. We literally went back to the hotel, and I threw up. I was that sick. I
yeah.
couldn't believe we missed out on that opportunity. So I know when a fan's yelling at a coach or at a player and they think they're not taking it seriously, believe me, it's almost like life. altering when you're a coach or a player and you lose a game that you feel like you should have won.
Right.
Yeah, man. Hey, coach. So we talked about this fifth quarter, what fifth quarter is about, and what's going on. So let's talk about the time in Memphis when it was after you left Memphis. What happened?
Well, Michael, we got fired, and Sandy, you can probably remember this. It's almost, I'm going to use the word criminal, that Larry Finch got fired from the University of Memphis. With all the success and what he meant to the university, to the city, what a great role model he was. So even with all the success we have, we joke about it as coaches. They say they're going in a different direction, Sandy. That's
Right.
rather than saying he got fired. The athletic directors say, well, we're going to go in a different direction. And I've been in several of those conversations, and I'm not embarrassed to say that. But I got let go as well. So I had to find a job. Fortunately, again, I was single. I didn't have a lot of
Right.
financial responsibility. So I was going to be very picky, as to my next job. I knew I wanted to continue to coach. So I had several opportunities to go to some lower level schools and places, but I kept waiting and waiting. Well, some of the dream schools that I wanted to go to, they dried up. So I ended up going to Southeast Missouri State, which is in Cape Girardeau, only 2.5 hours up the road from Memphis. And I coached there for 4 years. And then I had an opportunity to go to University of Alabama, Birmingham, and work for Murray Bartow, Gene Bartow's son.
Right.
And then from there, I went to Central Florida. I'm saying these things, Mike, because Sandy said earlier about these coaches picking up and having to move. My last job was at the University of Southern Mississippi, and we had a staff meeting with all the athletics department, and they were asking who moved the most times. So I added up all my moves from high school, and I was like at 17 times
Oh
I
my
had to move.
God.
And part of it was professional advancement. Other times is because you got let go, or
Right.
you had to make a career change. So coaching is very stressful in that. And so, Michael, I stayed in the profession for 34 years. My last job was the University of Southern Mississippi 7 seasons ago. I was actually working for a friend at the time, and he let me go. He fired me and another assistant coach at a bad time. So that's where I was at the crossroads, Michael, and had to make a decision. Am I going to fight this battle and continue to try to find a job, or just going to sit back? So I was going to take the year off, and then a lot of things happened, and I ended up meeting my wife and got married. So I've been semi-retired, but I still do a lot of consulting and
Right.
volunteer work, and I work for several different organizations. I don't get paid very well, but I enjoy the rewards that comes with it.
So where are you living now? What city?
I live in College Station, Texas. Actually, the name of our town is Bryan, which is like a
I
suburb.
know I lived in Houston for 16 years, so I'm
Oh,
very,
wow. I
very
remember
familiar.
reading. Yeah,
Yeah.
so Sandy. So the Texas A&M University is here, and so
Yes.
it's a dynamic place. It's either first or second largest school in the country, them or Central Florida, and the Aggie fan base is just incredible. Ironically, I was talking to Michael, I think, or maybe it was actually Ron Finch. A&M and Memphis play on December 10th this
They
year
do.
in Aggie land here in College Station. So I'll be at that game. But that's where I live. My wife's from here, and it's a wonderful place to live. I've lived in Texas before. I was a head coach at a place called the University of Texas Pan American, which
Yes.
is now called the Rio Grande Valley. And I don't know if it's the U.S. or if it's actually Mexico, but it's right on the border. And Michael, I know you've done a lot of traveling, but did you guys ever play in Edinburgh? Do you remember, as a Globetrotter?
I'm sure we did, man. I don't
Yeah.
remember it, but we played everywhere. I mean, there's so many places in Texas, man, and there's so many places in California, Texas, so many little small towns. But I'm sure we
Sure.
did. I can't say for sure if we did or not.
Right.
So
Hey,
Right.
coach, would you the right opportunity, would you jump back into coaching?
I would, it has to be right for me and working for the right person. As you know, environment and coaching is so important. And so, absolutely, I miss it, but I don't miss it enough where I just want to do it just to
sure.
say I'm a coach, or fortunately, I don't have to do it. I want to do it because it will enhance my life. And at the same time, I can make a difference in other people, be significant in someone else's life. But if I don't ever get the opportunity to do it again at the college level, I've been blessed. like, look at our relationship, Michael. That was so much fun back in February when they retired Lorenzen's jersey. I was just telling you, or maybe with my wife, on the 9th or 15th of this month, September, I'm going back to UNLV. Jerry Tarkanian had passed away, but his wife is having all the former players and coaches that worked or played for Tark out to the house. So those are the things that you cherish, and the friendships and all that. So coaching's a wonderful profession. I certainly get back in, but it would have to be the perfect opportunity.
So I'm going to ask a personal question. I like to ask some of our guests this is, how did you meet your wife?
Well, through some friends.
It's not a bad story. It's
No,
not a
no,
bad
it's a
story.
great story, actually. Yeah, she's a special lady, and she ironically is a coach. That's not really her whole um, persona, but she works with young actors and actresses. She started a program kind of from scratch. She was so good at it, working on a national level. She started her own program out of Texas and had some great success stories. She's about ready to step away because, like myself, I think she sees me retired and not doing anything, and thinks, hey, I need to have a little bit of part of that life. But she has a great influence on young people. She's changed so many lives, and she's so significant in their life. But I was telling Michael, one of her, she's got several Disney stars, but the young man named Manny that played on Modern Family, Rico Rodriguez, he's one of Nikki's. My wife's name is Nikki. He's one of her students. So it's a great thing that she does. And as we talk about living a dream, you're helping kids fulfill a dream. And that's really what a coach does. I know when I was able to play at the college level, it was a dream. When I was able to coach at the college level, it was a dream. So it's so fulfilling.
Oh, Coach, my thing when I played on a team, I always wanted to add value and add value. What value you think you added to our team when you played?
Well, that's a wonderful question, Mike, because the role of an assistant and a head coach, and I know this is about the fifth quarter, and I'm all over the place, and I have a
That's
tendency to do
okay.
that, so I
That's
apologize.
okay.
But that's who I am. But the value that I think I brought, I'm a team player. I just want to win, and so my job was to try to get the players to understand it as well. And Michael, you made our job easy because you guys did. You wanted to win and be significant and make an impact, in the college basketball world. So basically, it's trying to keep the guys in a positive mood because the head coach is going to have to get on you, or you're going to have a bad day, and that's when an assistant coach or an associate coach has to come behind that head coach and pat the young player on the back and say, hey, it's going to be okay. And I felt like I did a good job of that. And then getting to know the guys, I mean, you guys, even though I was older than you, you were really my friends as much as I was your coach. I mean, I love knowing about your life and knowing the ups and downs and watching you guys, be successful. But as you know, and this is the thing about the fifth quarter, if you're an athlete or a coach, you're going to have some great jubilant times in your life, but you're going to have just as many adverse times. And the old saying, it's not what happens to you, how you react to it. And I think that's what the fifth quarter is about, is how you react to adversity, or how do you handle success. One of my favorite sayings, and it may not be appropriate, but success killed Elvis. Now that we're in Memphis, and I don't mean that derogatory, like Elvis was a bad guy, but he was a wonderful person, very generous, a great Christian man. But success ultimately got him. He died at a young age because can you imagine the pressures that he faced every day? So it's not just handling adversity when you're a coach or a player, as you know, Michael. It's handling that success, and I think you really see that now with social media and the internet. You can't do anything without everybody knowing about it. So it's that's what I think's unique, different than when I was coaching, Michael. But I felt like I was able to contribute by keeping you guys, in a positive frame of mind, and I hope I did that.
It's funny that you said success. It kind of changes because my senior year, it was the expectations were so high. We were ranked number 3 in the country at one time, and I think as I look back and all the knowledge that I know now, I see success kind of I guess went to everybody's head, and we weren't as successful. I remember that first round loss my senior year to Drexel, man, that hurt. And I think we were good. I don't think we were as talented as we were my junior year, but I didn't expect us to lose in the first round against Drexel, man. Because Coach, what you just said right there hit the nail on the head, man. The success is just how you handle success, and I don't think we handle it well. And I know you would probably tell players and things different, the things that you know now and the things that you went through, especially with the NIL. I mean, times have changed so much, man. Do you think you're able to change? Because coaching is maybe different now, you know? It may be different, being that you have to change with the times. Now you have to deal with things like, the NCAA was the boss. It said whatever rules, like you had to sit out, you couldn't pay players, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, because those weren't factors. But now they're factors. You think you could adapt to that this time and age? Because I don't know if playing, I guess I'm sure you're a product of your time, but you've been around for a while, Coach. You think going from where you went, playing at UNLV, going back to Mississippi State and all the things you went through, to how coaching is today?
I think it's a difficult transition, Michael. I would hope to think I could, but at the same time, I'm kind of old school. And you know me as a coach. I wasn't a guy, I never liked to, there's a saying, criticize the performer, you criticize the performance. I'm all about the performer. If you're one of my players, I'm believing in you. So I love the performer, but every now and then you're going to make a mistake. So you've got to be critical. I don't know how the coaches do it. I talk to a lot of them. I know you see a lot stepping away now because it's very difficult. It's different than what they're used to. And when you're not comfortable and confident as a ball player or as a coach, you're not going to probably excel like you want to. So a lot of coaches that are financially secure are just stepping away. You look at the Jay Wrights, you look at the Coach K's, and those guys are just saying, hey, I'm done, or Roy Williams. And there may be other factors, Michael. There's not many coaches that have the luxury of walking away when they want to. I think there are some coaches, Sandy, that look back and they say, man, I wish I would have stepped away 2 or 3 years sooner. And then there's some, and that's one of the things I wanted to highlight if I had time, is that the one thing I understand about coaching, and again, I'm not a smart person, but I'm an observant person. And I realized that coaching and playing in sports in general is so fickle. You can be the hero one day and the GOAT the next. And I don't mean the GOAT like the greatest of all time. I've been that other GOAT, when I've made the bad play. So I get that. I'm going to tell a story about when I was a player at Mississippi State. I remember, I won't even say names, but we were playing a game at an outside venue from our home arena. It was like an exhibition game. You used to be able to travel around the state. And the head coach was getting all the pats on the back. And, the fans were great to see him because we had a good team. And I remember one of the assistant coaches saying to this other assistant coach, I overheard it. He said, he really thinks they're patting him because they think he's special. And they probably did like the coach. But what I've learned in coaching, it's not so much who you are, it's the position you hold. And that's when so many coaching changes are made, whether it be at the college level or professional, it's not necessarily going to be a better move sometimes, but it gives those fans and the fan base a sense of hope, a new beginning, and it may work, it may not. So I know when a person is saying how good you are after a win, and Michael, you know that when you were a player, they're patting you on the back, but when you're through playing, most of the fans move on and they're patting the next guy on the back. So if you can understand that, I think, and Michael could probably tell you, that makes the fifth quarter that much easier. But when you think it's all about you and they actually love you and care about you, and Sandy, the great thing about having family and those ones, you do have that handful of people that do love you, even if you lose every game or if you never coach again. And that's what makes it worth it, when you can surround yourself with those type of people. And I've been fortunate to have some of them in my life. Right now, I have my wife. I mean, she's my biggest critic, but at the same time, it doesn't matter where I'm coaching or laying on the couch. I think she's still going to be a fan of mine down the road. So it's that's what I think is what's the fifth quarter is about. That you have to put everything into perspective, and then
Right.
you have to understand that life goes on. There's going to be another Michael Wilson, and there's going to be another, John Morant, and it's going to happen. But enjoy the times, and then realize that it's going to go away sooner or later.
The thing that I think, because we've had a lot of these conversations, and Mike and I, especially before we started recording any of the podcasts, talked a lot about this. I think that it is difficult for athletes that are coming up, especially in high school and going into college. They're really skilled and they have to be focused on doing the best that they can. And how do they take that and also balance it with, okay, what am I going to do after the sport ends? What am I going to do next? And I think that, for some of these athletes, they don't want to think about it because that might mean they have to realize they're never going to play professionally or something like that. And I think that it's a double-edged sword when it comes to that. But on the other hand, they have to think, because they can go into college and get injured like the very first game, and their college career be over and their professional career be over. So it is I think a hard balance for them. We talked about how we think women have it easier because there's not as many professional routes for women to go
Sure.
into pro sports. So they kind of go into college with that plan A being what they're going to do outside of sports. But for guys, I think that it is a little bit more of a double-edged sword. And, I see all these kids and they're going into the transfer portal, and every year they're transferring to a different school, and it's just crazy. This year, I think they had twice as many kids in the portal as they did last year, which
Correct.
was
Yes.
really hard.
And it'll probably get worse, Sandy, as it goes on. And that's the great thing about the podcast, in Michael's fifth quarter, is that it does kind of explain everything, and it puts it in a little simpler term. I don't know if there's many young people that when they get into college, they're even thinking about their future. Of course, now
Right.
we've talked about it, Michael, they are getting paid. So really college athletes at the elite level are really more professional than they are even amateur or college players. So it may change, but it's hard to think about your future when you're just trying to, climb that
Right.
ladder of success as an athlete. And that's why I think this podcast is just amazing. I've listened to most of them. I haven't heard them all, but I'm looking forward to hearing some. And everybody has a story, and that's
They
kind of what I
do.
try
They
to tell
do.
young people.
Yeah.
Everybody has a story, and it's easy to point fingers and say, well, they didn't handle that right and this right. But until you walk in someone's shoes, it's so difficult. And you look at people that are super successful and you think, man, they had it easy. But think about the adversity and the trials and tribulations they probably had to go to be an elite person, or even just to be successful, like at the college level. It's difficult, and it's even more and more because I think there's so much emphasis on being a college athlete
Right.
right now with the money and all that. So it's a great thing you got what you guys are doing. I've learned from it, and stories that, like, Michael, I know you with the Globetrotters for 10 years and all that, but he shared with me, Sandy, some of the things. He had some tough times, even though it
Right.
looks like you're having a great time.
Sure.
There's days when you're tired of doing it. You're on the road for 4 or 5 months. So it's when you're at the elite level in any profession, there's a lot of tough times, and sometimes they even outweigh the good times.
There you go.
When we got into some of the recordings, for me, I'm so glad he reached out to me, because it's not just about talking about, oh, how did you find out what you're going to do in life? There's so many stories, and it fascinates me how people got from one point to another point and just everything that they go through. And everyone has been different. And as we've gone on, we're looking for um, just people that did not have it easy per se, but even those people that did, like, what was your mindset? Because I think kids today, and we hope that they're watching and listening, that so many of these, every single one of these people have had really great wisdom, And it's easy to, look back and say, well, he should have done this or he should have done that. And oh, why didn't he see that? Well, hindsight's always 2020. We can always look back and see what we didn't do wrong. I want to ask, what was something that about Memphis that you really enjoyed?
Well, it's fun when you're in a program, and it's like you said, you used the word double-edged sword. It's fun when you're in a program, expectations are high. I
Right.
mean, you want to be the best, and so I do think that, and I like this about Memphis, that sometimes the fans are a little bit unrealistic, and I don't
Oh,
mean being the number one team. That's wonderful. You want to try to be the elite, but it seemed like you were never good enough. I remember when Michael was playing. Michael, I think we had the second longest home winning streak in the country. I
Yeah.
can't remember who was in front of us. And I remember Sandy after the game. I'd go out and have something to eat and drink, and you'd be around fans, and you'd win the game. And now you had 45 wins in a row at home, and then it was 46. And no one talked about that. It was like, well, you only won by 20 points. And so you underneath you'd be thinking I was fuming, but at the same time, I kind of liked it because they just wanted you to be like the
yeah.
best and be perfect. So I like the fact that Memphis basketball was important. That was before the Grizzlies, of course. I know it's changed a little bit. And then, the one thing, Michael, if you recall, when I first got to Memphis, Sandy, the program was elite already, but we played on national TV at that time when Penny was his last year. David Vaughn was a junior or sophomore, excuse me, and the guys were young. We played on national TV like 15 times Penny's last year. Well, that allowed us to have a huge recruiting advantage because kids are watching television, not just
Sure.
in Memphis, but nationwide. Now, of course, every Division I basketball game is somehow you could watch it streamed or even on a cable channel. So it has kind of changed, but I love that basketball is important in Memphis. It's a great city. It's a great a bunch of people, and I think it has so much potential even to be a better city. Where it's located, all the different corporations that are there, and the people and the opportunity to coach at the University of Memphis, I was very blessed and loved every minute of it.
Mike, you want to
No,
ask
I
a
just
question?
wish, looking back, we always, it's very, I think these kids are more, I want to go back to, like you were talking about the college kids. And now I think the thing I wish if I could go back, I wish I would have had a more business sense to look at myself as a business and not, Coach, I know you said, the fans, they love you when you're playing, when you're not playing, they're like, whatever. But I think players should go into that as well. They should go in there with their mindset as well. I know they're starting to think business now, but they also starting to think like more of a business. Like, look, this is strictly business. I know it gets, you think yourself as a family, as a team or whatever. But like you said, Coach, you went from we went to the Sweet 16, and two seasons later, we're going in a new direction. You know what I mean? We were one hand
Absolutely.
check call away from pretty much winning it all to going to 2 seasons later saying we're moving in a new direction. So instead of looking at it like, okay, we should try to make ourselves as valuable as we can and get as much out of it as we can because we're getting so much out of it.
Right.
That's my mindset. If I could go back, that's what I would say. My mindset was, it's just like a lot of people, not in ordinary jobs, not just with basketball. It's they look at it, they take it too personal,
They do.
and
Yeah,
I think I think we take it too personal, and because we give so much to us, but that company or that university or whatever now it is, they're paying you, they're doing this for you, so you have an obligation to do that, and once you can't sit around and wait for you. Okay, we love you, we love you, we love you, we love you. Okay, we love you. But we got to move on to the next. Just like you said, there'll be another Michael Wilson. There'll be another Ja Morant going on, and they're constantly looking because they constantly have to change.
Well, exactly.
absolutely. Yeah.
Especially when they get to the NBA, there's always another group of people that are coming. We just interviewed Jerome Williams, and he talked about how, you know, there's always another group of guys that are there to take their spot, you know, and you're always running, looking over your shoulder. And you have to learn earlier on now that you are a business and you can't take things personally. And I think Michael's right, you know, just in personal life as well. Any job, you can't take it personal.
Yeah.
It's always got to be
Yeah.
you're thinking about it.
Well, that's
Yes,
where I
Sandy,
think
it's funny if you go back to the Globetrotter podcast, the interview. I mean, Andre Branch, he mentioned it like you know, we played competitive as well during my tenure with the Globetrotters. We played teams like Michigan State and things like that. So we were playing those teams. So I mean, every other day they would be bringing players in to see. You know what I mean? Those players are coming to take people's jobs. So it was constant pressure, not just with the NBA, but just with everything. There's always constant pressure. Sorry about it. Go ahead, Coach.
No, absolutely, Michael. And that's again what I wanted to make that point when I talked about the college coach thinking it's about him. It really isn't personal. It's a business. And you have to understand that. And when, like yourself, Michael, you were a very mature, and I'm not saying this because I'm on the podcast. You were a very mature young man in college. I mean, you were focused. You kind of had what I call a healthy chip on your shoulder. You wanted to prove some things, and that's wonderful. That's not very prevalent. At least it wasn't 6, 7 years ago when I was in the college game. You know, for 34 straight years, I coached young people. And I always joke, you know, when you're a coach, you keep getting older, but those guys you're coaching, they're always staying the same age, you know, 18 to 22. So, you know, you have to make a little adjustment. But it is a business. And I think when you understand that, the transition becomes a little bit easier. And that's why you've been so successful, Michael, and that you want to share that story to help these people that do struggle. Because everybody has demons in a battle when they have to make change. And like you said, would I like to coach again? In a perfect world, absolutely. But unfortunately, those opportunities don't always come along. Sandy, I want to tell a quick story about being significant that Michael doesn't even know. I mean, he knows, but you know, so when I was coaching Michael, our secretary at the University of Memphis, for Coach Finch's secretary, was Mitzi Line was her name, Lynae, and she had a small son named Dugan, and Dugan was kind of like one of the small boys. Well, when Michael was going into his junior year, Michael, or maybe
it was senior year. It was going to my senior year. Yeah.
So going into the senior year, yeah, Dugan. So you know, Michael knows this, but Dugan had the Guinness Book of World Records, and he comes into his mom and he says, "Mom, there's a guy that can dunk on a goal 12 feet 3 inches or whatever." He said, "Michael Wilson can jump higher than that." So do you know, going into Midnight Madness, when we were ranked 3rd in the country, they did a special on us that back when they actually had Midnight Madness, and they were going to film it. So Michael was going to try to break the world record that night on live TV. And so Dugan, you know, recognized how good a jumper and leaper and athlete Michael was. And so he was significant in Dugan's life. Ironically, Dugan is now the coach at a school in Tennessee. It used to be not Tennessee Temple, excuse me. They just changed the name of the school. But he's a head college basketball coach. And he told the story, you know, so Michael ended up, you didn't break the record that day, did you, Mike? I guess did
no, I didn't
do it. Yeah.
No, I didn't officially break the record. About 6 months later, with the Globetrotters, that's when I broke the record. So
I remember that.
Perfect timing.
Yeah, I remember they had to build a special basket, Sandy. I don't know if you remember watching it on TV, but you know, it's hard to find a basket 12 feet something, you know, and they had to extend it. And ironically, the women team played a little bit before us. I don't even know if Michael knows this story. So they had played their exhibition game, and then Michael was going to break the record, and then we were going to do our little exhibition for Midnight Madness. And so after the game, the women play with a ball that's a little bit smaller than the men's ball. So I tried to ease that women's ball into the game so Michael could use that and maybe palm it a little bit better. I don't think it ever made its way in there, but we did try to help him out a little bit. But that was
I did. I missed a couple of times, and I think I ran into the support system on my 3rd try, and Coach Finch was like, "No, you're gonna get hurt." So Coach Finch nixed it. He was like,
that's it.
No more.
That's
Yeah,
it.
he would have broken it, Sandy. I guarantee you that day. But yeah, coach was worried about his health situation. But the point I'm trying to make is, you make an impact on people's lives and don't even know it.
Right.
Dugan's going on to a successful college career, and it's all those little stories of watching young people play, and you want to emulate them. So that was I still love that story to this day. And Mike, I've seen it on YouTube some.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen that, but it's been on there where you've attempted to break the record, and then I've seen you break the record with the Globetrotters, of course.
I think we have it on his because we have a page with his podcast episode on it. So I think I have the link on it to there.
Nice.
Yes. There was a display. I don't think the display is up anymore because I know Justin would have Justin Wimmer just went to the Basketball Hall of Fame because junior college coach was inducted. But I used to have a display with the basket actually at the Hall of Fame. But I'm sure so many things, so much stuff has happened now. I don't think the display is up anymore. I do regret not taking my family, but my kids, their friends actually took pictures with the cutout at the Basketball Hall of Fame. They're like, that's Brian's dad or that's Andrew's dad. You know what I mean? So that's pretty cool.
I love
that.
that.
That's the great thing about sports. You're making an impact and you don't even know it, and that's what makes it wonderful. So it's so fun and exciting.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for being on the show today. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Sandy and Michael, for having me. I know I rambled, but
no.
I will tell you, I'm excited, Michael and Sandy, about following all the fifth quarter, participants or guests and seeing their stories, and hopefully it'll be a total success, and will for many years to come.
Well, we hope so as well. So as we come to this end of the fifth quarter podcast, we want to remind everyone to give us a follow on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe on our YouTube channel. And of course, we would love a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We love hearing the feedback from everyone, just as you heard Aaron McDonald talk at the beginning of the episode. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor for our show, you can contact us through our website, thefifthquarterpodcast.com. Tom, again, thank you so very much. We appreciate it. Michael, you want to have any last thoughts of whatever?
I'll just end it like this. It's words of wisdom. I know we ran in the same circles, Coach. I know you knew Charles Tex Harrison. That was my coach with the Globetrotters. He coached me when I was played. He told me this, and I always say this. He always told me this. You were born with two ends, one to sit on and one to think with. How much you succeed in life depends on which end you use the most. It's a simple case of heads you win, tails you lose.
Okay.
And some people didn't get it, but I always got it, man. So shout out to Coach Tex, God rest his soul, man.
I love it.
Yeah, Coach, thank you again for being on the show. Thank you for us reconnecting, and we'll talk soon. I'll call you in the next couple of days.
Sounds great. Thank you, Michael.
And if you're in Memphis anytime, be sure to give me a call. I'd love to go have lunch or dinner with you and your wife and just meet you in person.
Sounds great, Sandy. That's a deal.
Okay. And everybody out there, thank you again for listening. We'll be back with another episode. Have a great rest of the week.